The Indian state is basically a brilliantly engineered machine. Today in this explainer, we are unpacking exactly how the framers of the Constitution managed to balance power, authority, and identity. We'll be looking at three absolutely crucial pillars: the financial purse, the judicial gavel, and the linguistic voice of the nation. It's a beautifully structured system, and by the end of this, you're going to have a crystal clear understanding of how these core constitutional gears actually turn.
But before we get into the heavy machinery, let's bust a quick myth. Where exactly is the word budget written in the Indian Constitution? I mean, it's a term we hear endlessly in the news, right? Debated by politicians and analysts every single year. Well, if you go searching through the actual text of the Constitution, you're in for a surprise. The word budget literally doesn't exist anywhere in the entire document. Crazy, right?
Instead, the Constitution uses a very specific formal term under Article 112. It calls it the Annual Financial Statement, or Varshik Vittya Vivaran. This is the official constitutional mandate that requires the president to, and this is the exact phrasing, cause to be laid before both houses of parliament, a statement of the estimated receipts and expenditures of the government of India for every financial year. So when you see the finance minister stand up to give that famous speech, they're actually just fulfilling the strict requirement of Article 112.
Okay, so here's our roadmap for today's explainer. First, the Parliament's financial matters. Second, the Supreme Court's historic evolution. Third, the Supreme Court's core powers. And finally, fourth, India's official language framework. Let's get right into it.
Part 1. The Parliament's Financial Matters, Managing the People's Money.
So you might be wondering, where does the government actually keep all this cash? It doesn't just sit in one giant bank account. It is strictly divided up. The Consolidated Fund, or Sanchit Nidhi, is the primary account. Basically, all regular revenues and loans go straight in here. Now, what's crucial to understand is that certain expenses are charged directly to this fund. Think the salaries of the president, the vice president, and Supreme Court judges. These are non-votable. That means Parliament can debate them, sure, but they absolutely cannot vote to reduce or deny them, which brilliantly protects the independence of those offices. Then, on the flip side, there's the Contingency Fund, or Akasmik Nidhi. Think of this as the rainy day fund. It acts purely as an emergency reserve for unforeseen expenditures.
Now, how does the government actually legislate this money? Well, there's a classic trick question that confuses a lot of people, and it's the difference between a money bill under Article 110 and a financial bill under Article 117. Here is the golden rule to remember. All money bills are financial bills, but not all financial bills are money bills. Money bills deal strictly with very specific matters like taxation or borrowing, and they get a special expedited procedure. But both of these bills do share one fundamental rule. They can only be introduced in the Lok Sabha, no exceptions.
So let's say the government actually wants to spend some of that money. They can't just swing open the vault doors. There is an exact chronological flow to extract cash from the consolidated fund. Step 1. The annual financial statement is presented under Article 112. Step 2. The Lok Sabha debates and actually votes on the demands for grants under Article 113, and they have the power to approve or even reduce the requested amounts. But here's the kicker. Even after voting, that money is still locked. Step 3. The government must pass an appropriation bill under Article 114 to get the actual legal authority to finally withdraw those funds. It's a highly meticulous three-step lock-and-key mechanism.
But things don't always go according to plan. What happens when estimates fall short? Well, Article 115 provides the safety valves. If a project just runs out of money within the same financial year, the government asks for what's called a supplementary grant. Simple enough. But if that project spills over into a completely different financial year, or maybe money was spent on a totally new service that wasn't even contemplated in the original budget, they have to seek an additional or excess grant. This super precise categorization ensures financial accountability stays perfectly intact no matter how the fiscal timelines shift.
All right, let's move to Part 2 and see how this builds. Supreme Court's historic evolution, tracing the guardian of the law.
The concept of a supreme judiciary didn't just magically appear out of nowhere in 1950. The seeds for this were actually planted way back in the 1773 Regulating Act, which established a Supreme Court in Calcutta. Fast forward a bit, and the Government of India Act of 1935 created a federal court just to resolve disputes between provinces. Finally, this whole evolution culminated on January 28, 1950, when the modern Supreme Court of India officially came into existence, armed with immense constitutional authority.
And wow, has the institution grown since then. When the Supreme Court first opened its doors in 1950, it started with just 8 judges.
That's 1 Chief Justice and 7 others. Today, the maximum sanctioned strength is 34, including the Chief Justice of India. And Parliament has the authority to keep increasing this number as the volume of litigation across the country continues to grow.
So, who actually gets to sit on this incredibly powerful bench? The qualifications are strict, but they're pretty straightforward. First, you absolutely must be a citizen of India. Then, you need either 5 years of experience as a High Court judge or 10 years as a High Court advocate, or, and this is interesting, in the opinion of the president, you must be a distinguished jurist. But here's a totally surprising fact that catches almost everyone off guard. The Constitution actually does not prescribe a minimum age to become a Supreme Court judge.
Now, the actual way these judges are appointed has been the subject of massive constitutional debate over the years. The Constitution says the president appoints judges in consultation with the Chief Justice. But what exactly does consultation mean? Well, through the famous 3 judges cases, the Supreme Court interpreted this to mean a collegium system. In fact, the 1998 third judges case explicitly stated that the Chief Justice must consult a plurality of judges, specifically the 4 senior-most judges on the bench. Later in 2014, the government passed the 99th Amendment to replace this with a National Judicial Appointments Commission, or NJAC. However, the Supreme Court struck down the NJAC as unconstitutional. They neutrally ruled that judicial independence is a basic structure of the Constitution, which the collegium system aims to protect.
Sometimes the court faces a really practical problem, a lack of quorum, meaning there just aren't enough judges available to hold a session. Enter Article 127, which offers a brilliant workaround, the ad hoc judge. The Chief Justice, after getting the prior consent of the President, can temporarily appoint a qualified High Court judge directly to the Supreme Court. And the best part? While serving, this ad hoc judge temporarily enjoys all the vast powers, privileges, and jurisdiction of a permanent Supreme Court judge. It keeps the wheels of justice turning smoothly.
Moving on to Part 3, Supreme Court's core powers, the reach of the gavel. The sheer scale of the Supreme Court's jurisdiction is massive. I mean, it's essentially 4 completely different courts rolled into one. First, you have original jurisdiction. This is where it acts as a federal referee, exclusively resolving disputes between the center and the states. Second, writ jurisdiction, making it the direct protector of your fundamental rights. Third, appellate jurisdiction, meaning it's the final absolute court of appeal for civil and criminal cases from lower courts. And fourth, advisory jurisdiction under Article 143, where the president can actually bypass everything and directly ask the Supreme Court for its legal opinion on critical matters of public importance. This brilliantly illustrates just how wide its net is cast.
But it doesn't stop there. Beyond those jurisdictions, the Supreme Court holds 2 really unique titles. First, it is a court of record, which means its judgments are legally binding on all other courts across India, and it even has the power to punish for its own contempt. Additionally, the Chief Justice of India uniquely acts as the master of the roster. What does that mean? It means the Chief Justice alone holds the administrative privilege to constitute benches and allocate specific cases to different judges. It's a massive, absolute power in judicial administration.
And finally, let's explore Part 4, India's official language framework, the voice of the state. Let's see how this incredibly diverse state actually communicates officially.
Now, there is a stark contrast in how different branches of the government handle language. In Parliament, under Article 120, operations generally run in Hindi or English, but it's flexible, right? The presiding officer can easily allow a member to speak in their mother tongue to ensure true democratic representation. But then, contrast that with Article 348. For the Supreme Court and all high courts, the Constitution mandates a strict, non-negotiable default to the English language for all proceedings, bills, and acts. Why? Because the framers wanted absolute, unmistakable legal uniformity and precision in the highest courts of the land.
Stepping back to look at the broader Rajbhasha, or official language framework, we see a really delicate balancing act taking place. Article 343 explicitly declares Hindi and the Devanagari script as the official language of the Union. However, right next to it, Article 345 empowers the states to adopt their own regional languages for official purposes within their borders, completely respecting local linguistic identity. And meanwhile, Article 351 issues a very special directive to the Union to promote and develop the Hindi language so it can serve as a medium of expression for all the elements of India's composite culture. It's an ingenious system, perfectly designed to unify at the center while deeply respecting diversity at the state level.
Which brings us to our final thought for today. When you look at all of this together, How did the framers so meticulously balance the strict, unbreakable locks on the financial purse, the massive, independent power of the judicial gavel, and the incredibly diverse linguistic voice of India? It truly is a masterpiece of constitutional engineering, and it's the very machinery that still holds the world's largest democracy together today. Keep observing, keep learning, and I'll see you in the next explainer.